Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Pesachim Daf Tezvav is focused on halacha stated by Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says if you are burning chametz, which is truma chametz, you're allowed to be metamei it as you're burning it. Since you're destroying it anyway, and you have to because it's chametz, so it's becoming aser, it doesn't matter if it becomes tamei. Ordinarily, you're not allowed to be metamei chametz. You're not allowed to be metamei truma. But this, you're allowed to because it's being destroyed anyway. Now, the Gemara wants to know what Rabbi Meir is basing this on. Rabbi Meir had said in the Mishnah that it's based on their words. Who is they? What their words is this? The Gemara will try a couple of options. Then the Gemara is going to discuss the Shita of Rabbi Yossi, who argues with Rabbi Meir and says you're not allowed to be metamei teruma even if you're destroying it because it's aser. And the Gemara will define the parameters of their machlokes and what exactly Rabbi Yossi's responses to Rabbi Meir's is. So let's begin. We've seen Rabbi Meir's halacha of you destroying teruma because it's chametz. It's okay to be metamei it, to burn it together with chametz, which is tamei, because you're destroying it anyway. No problem of being metamei truma if it's becoming aser and you're destroying it. And he said this is based on their words. The Gemara says, who's their words? So we had already tried one option. We tried Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim and Rabbi Akiva. They both said that when you have to get rid of kachim meat or truma oil because it's a low-level tuma, you're allowed to make it into a high-level tuma as you're burning it. The Gemara said you can't prove that from there. There it's tamei already. You're making it more tamei. You can't prove from there that you could take something tahor and make it tamei. That's a much bigger jump. So the Gemara now wants to say it's based on a halacha of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. The Gemara says, what is this machlekes? What is this halacha of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua? The Gemara tries two options as to which Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua we're referring to. First halacha is as follows. A barrel of truma, let's say truma wine, which became safek tamei. We're not clear if it's tamei or not. So what are you supposed to do with it? Ordinarily, if you have truma, you have to be very careful with it. You have to protect it. You have to keep the barrel closed. You have to keep it in a protected zone so it doesn't become tamei. This thing is already safek tamei. So the machlokes, Rabbi Yeshua says you don't have to guard it anymore. You could leave it exposed, leave the cover off. It's fine. It's safek tamei. Let it become real tamei. It doesn't bother anybody. You can't drink from it anyway, so you could just leave it out in the open. Now, Rabbi Eliezer says no. Rabbi Eliezer says no. You have to guard it carefully because it's not tamei for sure. You don't want it to become tamei for sure. So the Gemara says, so maybe this is what Rabbi Meir is deriving his halacha from, just like we see over here. That you can take something which is not tamei for sure and make it tamei for sure. So Rabbi Meir says, so you're allowed to take something which is tahor and make it tamei because you can't use it anyway. It's being destroyed anyway. So Gemara says, well, that's not a valid source because over there, even Rabbi Eliezer, who said that, listen, you can't use the suffix tamei truma anyway, so you may as well just leave it out there to get tamei vadai. He didn't say you could actually go be metamei it with your hands, put it together with something that's tamei and cause tumah. So he didn't say that. Rabbi Meir is going much further. He's saying you could go burn it together with tamei chametz. You be metamei it. That's not a source for this halacha. So the Gemara says, okay, there's a different discussion between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Maybe that's what we're referring to, and that's the source for this halacha. What's that discussion? That discussion is where you have a barrel of truma, which is it's suspended over a wine press. It's in a wine press. Now, the wine press held the grapes, and they dripped down through the wine press into a pit below the wine press, which collected the wine that came out as you crushed the grapes. Here you have a barrel. The barrel wasn't opened. The grapes weren't put into the wine press. The barrel was meant to be there holding the grapes nicely and securely. But it was in the wine press and therefore was suspended over the pit. And then what happened is that the barrel broke. And now the wine is leaking out and it's dripping down into the pit below. Now the wine holds truma. The barrel holds truma. The pit below it holds chulin tameya. So chulin that's tamei, a Yisrael is allowed to eat. Even though it's tamei, it's just chulin. He's allowed to eat it. Truma, only a Kohen's allowed to eat, and a Kohen can't eat teruma that is tamei. So, the stuff that's in the barrel, the Kohen can eat. The stuff that's in the pit, the Yisrael can eat. Once they mix, nobody can eat it. You'll have a combination of teruma tahira with chulin tameya. That won't be edible for anybody. The Yisrael can't eat it because there's truma in there, and the Kohen can't eat it because it's tamei in there. So the question is, how should you save it? Now, the most readily available kalim to grab to catch the wine that's dripping down are tamei kalim. The problem is, if you go take a tamei clean, you catch the wine, you're going to be matami the wine. So the question is, you're allowed to go be matami the wine with your hands in order to save it from dripping into the chulin and making that chulin wine aser. At least I won't be able to save the truma. The truma will become tamei, but at least I'll save the chulin from getting truma mixed to it. I'll still be able to eat the chulin that's in the pit. So should I use the nearest kli and save as much of it as I can, or should I try to look for a tahar kli? And that way, if I go find a tahar kli, I'll save the truma that's coming out of the barrel. I'll keep it tahar, and the kohen will be able to eat it. But in the meantime, while I'm going to look for the tamei kli, the truma will drip out of the barrel into the chulin below, and it'll aser all that chulin. You won't be able to eat that chulin now because it'll be mixed with the truma. So what's the right thing to do here? The downside, of course, of using a tamei kli is not only you being matami it, you're being over nisser. You're not supposed to be matami things. Truma. So is it permitted in this case to prevent the loss of the chulin? So it's a machlokes, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua says you should try to use a tahar kli, try to save it. Rabbi Eliezer says no, use whatever kli you have. You're allowed to go be matame with your hands. You're allowed to be matame the truma in order to at least save the chulin. The whole well the whole pit full of chulin shouldn't be lost because you're going to have truma dripping into it. So now, here you clearly see that Rabbi Eliezer is saying you're allowed to take a tamei kli, be matame the truma with your hands, and you're allowed to do that because it's being destroyed anyway. It's dripping into chulin tamei, it's being destroyed anyway. You're allowed to go be matame with your hands, at least you'll save the chulin. So that could be the source for Rabbi Meir's halacha that you're allowed to burn chametz, truma, tahira together with chametz, Tameya, because even though you're being matame with your hands, it's being destroyed anyway. It's not a problem. Okay, where now asks, hold on a second. You're giving me a good source. The problem is that Rabbi Yossi argues on Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says you're allowed to be matame the truma when you're burning it. Rabbi Yossi says you can't. And Rabbi Yossi says your proof is not a good proof. So based on what Rabbi Yossi says to reject the proof, we'll see what Rabbi Meir's proof was. Now in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi didn't say what his proof was. He just said your proof is not a good proof. But there's a different brisa elsewhere where Rabbi Yossi clearly says this is not how he responds to Rabbi Meir. He says, Rabbi Meir, your source is not a good source. Your source was from Rabbi Chanina's Ganekana man from Rabbi Kiva, who said that you're allowed to be matame tamei carbon meat and tamei truma oil by destroying it together with more tamei meat. It's tamei already, but you're allowed to bring the level of tamei up higher, which was our original thought as to what Rabbi Meir's source was. So on that, Rabbi Yossi responds and he says, how could you bring me a source from there? There you have something tamei and you're making it more tamei. That's not a source that you're allowed to take something tahar and make it tamei. Exactly the taina that we had on Rabbi Meir in the first place is what Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah argues on Rabbi Meir. So you see, Rabbi Meir's source clearly was from that halacha of the tamei meat that's becoming a higher level tamei. It's not from this discussion about the wine, the barrel dripping in. So Gemara says, you're right as far as how Rabbi Yossi understood Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi understood that Rabbi Meir was bringing a proof from the case of tamei meat that's becoming a higher level of tumah, and that's why Rabbi Yossi responded indignantly. He said, what do you mean? How can you prove from tumah that's becoming more tamei to something that's tahar or safek tahar that's becoming vadei tahar? Yes, that is what Rabbi Yossi thought he said. However, that's not what Rabbi Meir was saying. That is a very good taina, and Rabbi Meir would never have said that. Rabbi Meir was actually proving from the case of Rabbi Eliezer with the barrel of truma that was dripping into the pit of chulin. So Gemara said, and on that, Rabbi Yossi, when he found out that that's what Rabbi Meir was saying, and that he responded as well, he said that you can't bring me a proof from there also. It's also not a good proof. Gemara says, why not? Why it's not a good proof? Sounds like a very good proof. Yeah, you have tahar wine, and you're being matame it with your hands. You're catching it in a kli. That's tamei. You're being matame it, and you're doing it because it's falling into the tumah anyway. So you're preventing loss. So the Gemara says that case is very different. There, the reason that we're allowing you to be matame the truma is because we want to save a loss. If you don't catch it in a tamei kli, it's going to drip into a pit filled with chulin, and going to destroy that chuli. You're not going to be able to eat it. Yisrael won't be able to eat it anymore because it'll have truma in it. It'll go in the garbage. Kohen can't eat it because it's tamei, and Yisrael won't be able to eat it because your truma is dripping into it. So we want to prevent the loss. So to prevent the loss, yes, there you're allowed to go be matame truma, which is being destroyed anyway. It's falling into the pit anyway. So that you're allowed to do. But in Rabbi Meir's case, there's no loss. Why should I burn truma together with chametz? Why should I be matame it as I do that? What would be the point? So Gemara says there is a point. The point is that you have truma that's tamei, and you have other chametz. You have truma that's tahar or suffix tahar, and you have other chametz that's tamei. You're telling me you have to burn it separately. It means you have to make two separate fires. Two separate fires is a waste of wood. So Gemara says waste of wood. Waste of wood is not a hefsid meruba. It's not a big loss. It's a very insignificant loss. A loss like that would not be a reason for us to say you can go and be mitame that truma tahira. The case of the wine, the pit filled with wine, that's a significant loss. There we would say you're allowed to do it. Okay, now the Gemara wants to delve deeper into this machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Again, the machlokes is you have chametz teruma, and it's becoming usher because it's Pesach is arriving and the Zman beer is approaching. So you have to burn it. So according to Rabbi Meir, since you're destroying it and it's usher, you're allowed to burn it in a way that makes it tamei. According to Rabbi Yossi, no, you have to keep it tahar. So Gemara says, what time of the day on our Pesach are we talking about? How usher is this thing? So Rabbi Yechanan says as follows, or Asikos Rabbi Yechanan says as follows, if it's already usher daraisa, if it's past the time of Isser Chametz daraisa, everybody agrees you're allowed to be matameit, because Isser and Tumah, those are overlapping concepts. The point, Chametz, Truma that becomes Tamei, the whole problem with it is that it's Usser. It's destroyed, it's useless. If it's already Usser because it's Chametz Daraisa, and the time of Isser, Chametz Daraisa has arrived, there's no Machlekes there. There everybody says you're allowed to be Matamei, it's not going to make things any worse for it. Machlekes is during the time of Isser Chametz Derabanan, during the 5th hour of the day. There it's after the 5th hour of the day, when you're in the 6th hour of the day. There it's Usser to keep it around, you're mechuyev to destroy it midrabanan. So what do we say there? Rabbi Yossi says, listen, it's only usher midrabanan. Midaraisa it's mutter. You cannot make it tamei, which would make it usher de'iraisa. Rabbi Meir says, no, the fact that it's usher midrabanan is enough. It's already isser midrabanan. You can be matami it. It makes no difference to take something that's usher derabanan and make it tamei deraisa. So Gemara says, according to this, it's very good to figure out that Rabbi Meir's source for this halacha goes back to the case of the meat. The discussion of Rabbi Chanina Skanakanim and Rabbi Akiva, they were talking about meat or oil, which is tamei on a low level tuma. You're allowed to be tamei on a high level tuma. That Rabbi Meir now has a very good source from there. He understood that when they said low level tuma, high level tuma, they were talking about it where it's tamei derabanan. You're allowed to make it tamei deraisa because there's no significance either way. It's also for you. So Rabbi Meir is saying the same thing. Since it's aser derabanan, you're allowed to make it aser deraisa. You're allowed to be tamei deraisa, and that's a very good source. The Gemara says yes, correct. According to Rabbi Yechanan, this is the pshat, and that is what Rabbi Meir's source was, and that's where Rabbi disagrees. He says you can't turn something that's Isser Derabanan into Tumah Deraisa. That would not be correct. Now the Gemara wants to find a potential proof to this concept. So Gemara says that there's a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai about pigul and noiser. Pigul is carbon meat that is puzzle. You're not allowed to eat it because the Kohen who did the avoda on it had the wrong kavana. Noiser is meat from a carbon that's left over after the time which you're allowed to eat it. Both of them are forbidden to be eaten. Now, if you have tamei meat from a carbon that's also forbidden to be eaten, and we have a machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, you're allowed to burn them all together. According to Beis Shammai, you can't burn them together because you're going to be metamei, the pigul and the noiser. Those, even though they're usher, they're not tamei. And according to Beis Hillel, you're allowed to burn them. They're all usher, tamei, same thing. There is no difference practically. If you're being matame, something that's usher, you're not making it any worse off, and therefore you're allowed to do it. So maybe we have a proof here to Rabbi Meir's concept. You're allowed to be matame, something which is usher. Where Rabbi Meir has said that was that you're allowed to be matame truma chametz, that is usher medabanan al chametz. So the Gemara says that you can't bring a proof from here because Beis Hillel's reasoning here is different. Beis Hillel is not saying necessarily the reason you're allowed to be matamid is because it's usher. They're saying you're allowed to be matamid because it's tamei derabanan. The Rabbanan created a level of tumma on pigol and a nicer. They did not want people to be lazy about the tumma and the nicer, so they created. They did not want the kahanim to be lazy about the pigol and the nicer, so they created a level of tumma on it, and that we will be careful not to cause it and make sure it doesn't happen and to get rid of it. So therefore it has tumma. That's why Beis Hillel says you're allowed to burn it together with the tumma. It already has tumma, so you don't have a source here that iser and tumma are the same thing as far as causing tumma to something that's already aser. The Gemara now says, well, I can bring you another proof to this concept. This time it's not that something which is aser is just as good as tamei and you're allowed to be metamid, but something which is not edible is just as good as tamei and you're allowed to be metamid. From a brayso that says if you have a truma bread which is moldy, it's rotten to the point that a person can't eat it, so if a dog could eat it, it still counts as food and it becomes tamei, special halachos of tumas ochlin, food tumma that apply to it. But since at least a person can't eat it, you're allowed to burn it together with tamei, other things on Pesach. Not a problem, because it's not edible anyways. Gemara says that's not necessarily proof. That truma, because it's not edible, that's not considered to be anything. It's considered to be dirt. So there, you're allowed to be matame the dirt. It loses the status of truma altogether. However, truma, which is usher to eat, in our case, you wouldn't be able to apply the concept there. Not necessarily true. It's still food. It's just food that you can't eat. It could be that it would have stricter halachos. Okay, now the Gemara has some questions over here. We've just said, according to Rabbi Yochanan's understanding, that Rabbi Meir's source for his halacha really comes from Rabbi Chanina. It comes from the case of the meat, which was tamei, low-level tumma, and it became higher-level tumma. The problem is, in our Mishnah, when Rabbi Yossi responds to Rabbi Meir, and he says, you can't bring me proof from there, Rabbi Yossi then quotes the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Chanina about safek tumma, are you allowed to expose it to become vade tumma or not? What does that have to do with anything? If Rabbi Meir's source was from Rabbi Chanina in the case of the meat, which is tamei, becoming more tamei, what are we going to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua about safek tumma? What does that have to do with anything? So Gemara says Rabbi Yossi was responding to both sources. He was saying, your source is not a source. If you want to bring me a source from this case of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, that's also not a source. Even though that wasn't Rabbi Meir's source, he's saying that is also, don't go running to that as a source. That's not a good source either. That case is not the same as your case. That case was at least talking about safek tumma that's becoming a vade tumma. You're telling me about something which is tahar completely, that's becoming tahar, that's becoming tamei completely. Okay, the Gemara's next question is what exactly is Rabbi Yossi's problem? Why does Rabbi Yossi reject the source from Rabbi Chanina? Rabbi Meir had a good source from Rabbi Chanina. According to Rabbi Yochanan's understanding, Rabbi Meir said, look at Rabbi Chanina's case. You have meat, which is tamei tumma dirabanan, and you're allowed to be matamid midiraisa. So the same halacha would apply to the case of truma, which is chametz. During the time of iser chametz dirabanan, it's also dirabanan. You're allowed to be matamid tumma diraisa. It's a very good source. So what's Rabbi Yossi's issue with that? So Gemara says Rabbi Yossi's issue is as follows. Rabbi Yossi, the case over there, the case of the meat which was tamei, was the type of tumma which is a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, whether it's tumma deraisa or tumma derabanan. Rabbi Meir held it's tumma derabanan, and therefore he has a good proof from there, because he's taking something tumma derabanan and making it a tumma deraisa. Rabbi Yossi says, no, he understands that tumma was talking about tumma deiraisa. What's this tumma? That's a machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir, whether it's tumma deraisa or tumma derabanan. It's talking about where it became tamei via water, via liquids. Machlokes whether liquids which are tamei can make other food tamei midaraisa or only midrabanan. Rabbi Meir holds it's only midrabanan, and therefore I have a proof from here. Rabbi Yossi says no. This is liquids can make other foods tamei even midairaisa, and therefore this is something which is dairaisa that's becoming more dairaisa, and that's therefore not any proof to your case at all. The Gemara supports this with a brayso which lays out this machlokes. The brayso says that as far as liquids becoming tamei themselves, that's a issue of dairaisa. Liquids are tamei, become tamei midaraisa. If you have a suffix, then it's a suffix deraisa. You have to go l'chumra. As far as the liquids go, of being tamei other food, so that's a three-way machlokes. According to Rabbi Meir, it's a derabanan issue. According to Rabbi Elazar, like Rabbi Meir, it's a derabanan issue. According to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's a d'oraisa issue when water is metame anything. And according to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, water is a d'oraisa issue when it's being metame other food. So you see, among the opinions here, clearly, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's a d'oraisa issue when water is being metame food like this meat here. According to Rabbi Meir, it's a derabanan issue, and that's why Rabbi Meir has a proof in this case, and Rabbi Yossi says.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.